excited to chat about revenue operations today. It's something this panel is super passionate about and something we're all building our careers around. To get started, I want to just do a couple of quick introductions of the panel. We'll do a quick overview of what revenue operations is for the people who aren't aware of that in the room, and we're going to dive into some topics. One quick announcement, if you do have questions, please raise your hand and someone will come over to you with a note card and we'll be able to review those questions at the end. So to get started, our panel is Anita, who runs revenue operations at Event Farm, Mike from Namely, and Sylvia from Eventbrite. Anita, we'll start with you and tell us a little bit about your role and how revenue operations fits at Event Farm.
Hello. Event Farm is an experiential marketing platform focused on events. So everything from registration and on-site check-in to experiential technology using RFID. So we sell to marketers, and marketing is obviously a big focus for us. But revenue operations, the role that I've been in for the last year at Event Farm, we sort of modeled our RevOps structure off of the Funnelcake framework. And if you're not familiar with that, you should check it out. We took an approach to reduce, or actually completely remove the silos between marketing, sales, and the customer success org, which is inclusive of support. So the first steps that we did, we kind of obliterated all of the boundaries between them and sort of got into a position to align everybody, not just in their work, but also to the same goal. So all of our metrics and all of the measurements of success that we use, we're all looking at the same thing. So I know we're going to go a little bit deeper, so I'll leave it there.
Cool. And Mike?
Hi, my name is Mike Brown. I actually used the blog post on revenue operations to write my job description at Namely. I really believe in that model. Analytics to figure out where you can do better. Tech stack, I combine that with process when your systems don't deliver to you the information you need to figure out what's going on. Enablement, once you figure out what you want people to do, to train them to do that, and operations to make sure they do that. So the way that works for me, I actually have, currently, I'm missing the tech stack, but I have an open spot. But I've got the other three functions covered. I report to the CRO. I'm at the same level as the head of sales and the head of marketing and the head of post-sales. So pretty much structured exactly like you would see on the Funnelcake website.
My name is Sylvia Kainz. I'm heading up revenue operations for Eventbrite. I'm hoping everybody here knows what Eventbrite is all about. You register for the event, so you should have used our software. But the motto really is we bring the world together through life experiences. Really interesting because when I look at us, the panel here, we are coming from three companies at very different stages. And what is really interesting for me is that it works. So I am probably working at the largest company for us three here, and it works as well as at probably Event Farm and Namely. I have the same four functions that my partners here have. So I own tools, insights, enablement, and analytics. No, wait, what am I missing? Operations, of course. When I started at Eventbrite, I was actually asked to build a team, so it didn't exist at Eventbrite before. We had marketing operations, we had sales operations, we had customer success and support operations, and we had a lot of duplication, we had a lot of silos, and what we did is we brought these teams, the operational teams together, and built this revenue operation functions.
So what you might have gathered from the intros here is that the goal of revenue operations is to bring your operations, enablement, insights, and tools together across marketing, sales, and customer success. And it's really to bring those internally facing teams together to take the internal work, really focus it, align everyone on revenue, and free up your marketing team, sales team, and customer success team to focus on what they do best, which is work externally from the organization. I want to dive into the marketing side of this today because we are in a room full of CMOs. So I'd love to hear how do you integrate with marketing, and starting with Sylvia.
Yes, so my customers or stakeholders are marketing, sales, and the customer experience teams. So that means 1/3 of my attention is for sure towards the marketers. Revenue operation is really what we call the glue between sales and marketing, and then it could be customer experience. But it's to a large extent between sales and marketing, and we want to make sure that those two teams are aligned. And what's really important is that there is not just alignment, but there is, as we all scale our teams and operations and companies, we actually scale those teams together. So they need to be in lockstep in order to be really successful to grow.
One of the events that drove me down this career path, I was previously on the finance path, was I came into work at a company and the SDR team, the lead gen team, was gone. They were all up in Napa celebrating a banner quarter. I sat between them and the sales reps. The sales reps had a very different perspective. And it turns out that the marketing folks scored themselves up until the point they handed it off to sales, and sales scored themselves on whatever they picked up from marketing. That was about 40% leakage right there. And it was something super simple. I hope there aren't too many salespeople in the room, but converting an opportunity a lead to an opportunity was a 2-step process. A lot of them stopped at step 1. And so it was a huge disconnect. And the coolest thing is, by being sort of the neutral Switzerland, and this is the neutral way of looking at this, very quickly the right answer, both sides knew the right answer, and we got the right dashboard to show them what it was happening. We got the right training in place, and we took that 40% drop-off rate down to a normal, healthy 10 to 15% DQ rate. You know, any salesperson loves getting a better way to close deals and build pipelines. So that's just one of the examples of the things that having this alignment and having sort of a neutral perspective, but also the different skill sets, the analytics, the process, the tools, the enablement, and then the ongoing inspection. It helps out everybody. And it helps sales and marketing stay aligned so you don't miss the inevitable shifts in the market that ripple through your funnel.
I'd say we've had a similar experience at Event Farm. I think that for a long time our SDRs were celebrating the same, and while that was happening, marketing was celebrating, far exceeding the metrics that they're traditionally measured on, so MQLs and SQLs, and then that story ends, and then they start the next cadence and the next campaign and the next focus, especially for content marketing. And I think that for a company of our size and the space that we're in, we come up against our competitors who are talking to the same exact people that we are, and so there's a differentiator that we always have to throw out into the ring. And if our marketing team wasn't so focused on revenue as they are right now, then they would still be successful in achieving those metrics, but it wouldn't be successfully translating into revenue. And so bringing everybody under the same umbrella in terms of the revenue goals and how we get there, we've established a way in Event Farm for each of those teams to understand the impact that they're having together on taking the work that was done in the role that's previous to them in the funnel and passing it off to the next role to, inevitably to the customer success team, who we also treat like BD resources, and it kind of goes all the way back around. But bringing marketing into a very strategic role in revenue is how we're focused right now.
Can I add one thing? So, we're all in planning right now, right? I'm sure 2019, big planning, and what I noticed, and I'm sure my partners here too, is to see that we're RevOps, the purpose of planning for us now is that we're planning for the entire funnel. Meaning let's say we get from our CFO our revenue numbers, and then we break it down and kind of like go upstream from the funnel. So we look at SQLs, then we look at MQLs, then we look at leads, and then we look at the top of the funnel. And we're starting to build our entire 2019 year now with the entire funnel in mind, and working with sales as well as marketing to make sure that those numbers are consistent with what those teams can provide to us. And so conversion rates from funnel or from stage to stage is super important for us. And it also needs to go along the entire funnel. So it can't stop at marketing and then there's a handoff to somebody else in sales. It needs to be planned through and through.
And that's a really great point that RevOps can really bring all of your metrics together. We heard this from John Miller earlier, where he talked about volume, balance, conversion, and velocity. We have a very similar philosophy to that. And I know, Mike, you have some very strong opinions on how metrics should be used in revenue operations.
Right. I think the origin of the metrics, so I come from a finance background. Before that, I was actually a nuclear engineer. So metrics, math, that was kind of how I thought about the world. I then went into the military, and what I saw was the value of pushing information and decision making to the edge, so that instead of us on the boat having to call somebody in Hawaii, you would have to, like, here are your rules, here's the data, go figure it out, and call us if you're outside of these bounds or whatever. And so that value of pushing decision making to the edge, as I went into business after the military, I started in finance. So of course, you build a model, very much like Sylvia said, where you want to make sure everything's aligned, that you actually are funding the things you are telling people to do, and that they understand the interdependencies. Okay, so in finance, 65-70% of my mind share was spent on how do we make the top line. So I ended up spending a lot of time in operations. And I didn't want to be the person losing sleep over, are we going to make our number? I wanted everybody out there knowing the economic impact of their decisions, which turns into metrics that are linked to your financial model that you build into your process so you can measure them, so everybody can see the DQ rate. This is something we need to work on. And so it's that concept of metrics that are aligned with your financial model and pushing those out to the field, so that I'm not calling them and say, hey, did you see this? You know, I'm getting instead, hey, I'm seeing this. Is anybody else seeing this? Right? That allows me to have a much simpler life instead of having to be sort of the center of all of this.
And so how do you get people bought into using data to run their operations when maybe that's not something they're used to doing, or they're used to using the wrong data? You
know, it's interesting. A lot of people talk about being data driven, and then you see just a lot of spreadsheets of numbers, and you don't see the analytics. People don't trust the numbers, et cetera. So that's a key thing to sort of get over, is just decide the right metrics. Some of them you force on people, but it's also pretty threatening. People who've been measured one way, now you want to measure them a different way. So you've got to do a lot of enablement about what the metrics mean, how it drives their ability to create success for Namely. And so I think, you know, showing them that linkage. And then the other thing is we chose Funnelcake, and one of my decision criteria is this a tops down tool that kind of says, this is what we want to show the board, you guys figure out how to use it, or is this a bottoms up tool? It helps people see what I'm worried about. Can they take action on it? Yes, in the system with weekly emails, just the right time of the day, so that you nudge them to pay attention to the things you want to do, and then you can inspect whether they're doing that, and then you can do the wall of shame, you know, in the manager meeting, and then you can, you know, show the board, and here's how we move the needle by paying attention to this.
Thanks for the shout out, Mike. Speaking of tools, Sylvia, I know that tools, you have a lot of them.
Yeah, tools. I don't know where to start. We have a lot of tools. What we've done is we looked at our systems and tools, and these are all what I would call business systems. And we grouped them into primary, secondary, and tertiary tools and systems. And I don't know if you've heard of Ghost IT, but everybody can put a tool on their credit card, right? Whatever it is, could be a marketing tool, could be a sales tool, or something else. And so we consolidated or brought all of our tools into RevOps on the business side and really started to streamline, figuring out which tools do we need, why do we have 5 email marketing systems, why do we have a lot of the tools that are on credit card and we can't really negotiate volume discounts, or we can't really follow guidelines from GDPR or SOX requirements. And so we really started to consolidate that and come up with a much more integrated approach. And what's really nice is that I see this often with RevOps, that we're spearheading effort across the organization. So as much as we're just looking and trying to be neutral and as Switzerland to sales and marketing, or the revenue generating teams, we're starting to have really an impact across the organization and taking the leadership in really scaling and growing the organization efficiently. And that's really a surprise to me. I didn't expect that, but that's kind of like the power of revenue operations.
Anita, to one of the earlier presentations, change management can be one of the most difficult things. I think, Sylvia, you just touched on that a little bit. How did you get your team bought into a RevOps model and roll out that change, and what were some of the lessons learned in doing that?
I think that at Event Farm, one of the things that we're really lucky to have is transparency. That it kind of is our hallmark. So our teams, we share information with them and we explain the method to our madness, and we explain how we've arrived at a strategic initiative, whether it's completely remove the SDR function from our company, which is something that we did as part of this reorg. We've restructured each of the roles within our sales organization and our customer success organization and marketing as well. And so the way we were able to get buy-in initially at the very beginning of our transition from a legacy framework to a RevOps framework last year was to explain why right up front. And to also show how we were going to measure success and what the timeline was that we were going to use to review our first initiatives. So with the sales team, that's where we started with RevOps, pulling them in with marketing. We explained right up front how we were going to tell if we were doing the right thing. And we showed those metrics at the end of the month and the end of the quarter, and the places where we weren't getting the outcome that we had expected or hoped for, we right away pivoted. So our whole thing is fail fast and be transparent. And through that model, we've built a lot of trust within our organization, both with the CEO and the board, but also with our individual contributors on this team, because we've given each of them the ability to become invested in the outcome in a way that they weren't directly before. So our SDRs at the time, now they're business development managers, and that's a completely different focus for us, but they understand every day exactly what the impact is that they have on the rest of the funnel and how that translates to revenue and retention. So we share that whole picture, and there are different steps that we took, including having a revenue organization stand up on a weekly basis, where we don't really report the news in terms of metrics, but we talk through each of the teams to gather insights from the week before. Event Farm has to move very quickly right now in the stage that we're in, so a week can be a long time for us, and a lot can happen in those 7 days. So we do catch-ups, and we share information, and we're now moving to bringing product into those conversations, because the best marketing channel we have is our product. And so marketers are using it and talking to other people about it. People see it when they go to events, and so their effect on revenue needs to be felt too. So we pull them into those conversations so they can hear from our revenue teams, which are the traditional sales and marketing.
We've had some really good questions from the audience. So one, and I don't know the answer to this, do each of you have a chief revenue officer?
We do.
Yes, we do.
Same here.
And then what's the difference between the chief revenue officer and the VP of sales?
So in our situation, our VP of Sales reports also into the Chief Revenue Officer. And the difference really is that the Chief Revenue Officer owns more than just the pure sales function. So sales is for us just the acquisition side of the business, right? But then we have the retention side of the business, and that's owned normally by a VP of Customer Success. And he or she is a peer to the VP of Sales. And so they own more, so the Chief Revenue Officer also, most of the time I think, owns the marketing function. And this is really where RevOps comes in as kind of like the fourth partner in the play, where we are owning that operational function for the Chief Revenue Officer so that all of these 3 revenue-facing teams can actually scale and grow.
So we're set up just like that as well, with a Chief Revenue Officer, marketing, sales, and post-sales reports in. And we've been talking a lot about the value of alignment within go-to-market. And just right now, we're going through an exercise where it's more, how does go-to-market speak with one voice to product? So, each group sort of has their list of issues and things they want product to do. And we're starting to see this ripple through where, the sales team was working through with the solution consultants and they were sending a list. And we got product marketing involved. And the next time you saw that list, it wasn't a list of 70 items, it was themes that product marketing had negotiated with product management. This is the way we think and discuss about our product. That rolled into, the way we communicate in marketing. That rolls into the way we report how things are working downstream. But the main thing is by having sort of someone who can bring these different ways of looking at the world and speak powerfully with one framework to the rest of the company. It used to be like one group was speaking German, one group was speaking French, one group was speaking Japanese, and we were asking these engineers to understand it all. So it's not just alignment internally, it's also alignment with the rest of the organization.
And then we had another question. If you were going to build RevOps from a blank slate, how would you build it?
You read Funnelcake's blog.
Yeah.
I think we all 3 here built our teams, and we build them according to the model. And I know that sounds, simple to say like, oh, I'll just build it exactly what Funnelcake wrote about. But when you really read it, it makes total sense. And it's actually, in my opinion, the only way you can build a revenue operations function. And really the idea fundamentally is if you want to be a customer-centric organization and you want to understand how your customer move from being a lead all the way to a closed won opportunity, you need to build systems, processes, and align the teams to really think that way. And that's what Revenue Ops can help with, because we think along the entire funnel, and otherwise those 3 departments are not necessarily thinking that way. They're optimizing just very naturally and historically according to their own plans and not according to really what it takes to be a customer-centric organization.
I came in, wrote this beautiful job description, and they're super excited. This is exactly what we need. Great. I walk in, the CEO happens to be in town, points me to one of these wonderful open seating desks. I have 8 desks to myself. And he says, oh, this is for your future team, build it however you want to see fit. This is awesome. I didn't really want a team that big, but hey, I'm glad you guys are putting your money where your mouth is. Unfortunately, they didn't. My budget was actually 0. So what did we have? We had a great leader of sales operations who wanted to have a little bit bigger scope to her responsibilities and was capable of seeing sort of across departmental boundaries in a very effective way. We had an enablement person who was hired without really a clear charter. We know we need enablement, not sure what. And then, of course, when you go to the individual leaders, some of them were like, oh, we've got this wired. We don't need training. Worry about somebody else, right? So, and then the third one was just this awesome lady in marketing who was marketing operations and kind of got stuck being sort of their tech person because she would do the reading and figure out how does HubSpot actually work? How does, Zoom Info, Hundo, DataFox, your entire tech stack. And that just became an anchor around her neck because what she really wanted to use was use this data. So I pulled those folks from their teams and negotiated it with the folks that they reported to and sold them on this vision, which I kind of thought had already been pre-sold. But one of the interesting things was the lady who ran marketing operations. She used to send out these weekly emails. Here's what's going on in marketing. Hey, the nature of our MQLA traffic is changing. You need to look at this list and not that list, right? Because they're coming in over here. No one listened to her. Isn't that strange? We're humans, but she's marketing, it's email. The strange thing is when her title changed to revenue operations and she was considered being more neutral, all of a sudden people are like, oh, these emails are gold. So just something as simple as having the concept of a shared group that's meant to help us all work better together for the better of all of us just kind of created a different mindset around being a learning culture.
I think the first thing that I would do, in addition to everything that Sylvia and Mike have talked about, is take a really hard look of where you're at. Because I think we all can say, well, I would fix this, and I would change this, and I would move us in this direction. But if you don't know exactly where you are and make sure that all of the heads of all your different teams also can see and understand and really land it, no matter what that looks like, set the baseline, this is where we are, and then really understand what the goal is. Like, saying revenue is the goal and saying alignment is the goal, those are great, but what revenue? What is the problem that you're trying to solve with implementing revenue operations? And for us, it was probably very different initially than maybe for Namely or Eventbrite, but the spirit is the same. But I think definitely know where you're starting from and what the goal is, and then you can establish a path that way.
And so what are some of the changes you've seen in your business, either how the teams are aligned, how they're operating? I know, Mike, your story of just changing someone's title got people to pay attention to the important work they were doing. What other items have you seen change? Well,
one of the big things we look at is the effectiveness of the funnel all the way from the top marketing down to closed one. And looking for leakage, looking for something getting stuck and trying to figure it out. And so we leveraged, another free plug for Funnelcake, we leveraged Funnelcake to see all the action was happening in 2 stages and everything else after that was like a rubber stamp. And so we used that to redesign the sales process and break those in 2 stages into 3 stages, align that with training. Here's what these stages really mean. And then you line that with materials, the content, the product marketing, et cetera, that they need at each point in the sales cycle. And so the big thing I look at, a couple things, is every month, how quickly is stuff just moving, right? So kind of that's kind of my quick early indicator. And then over the longer run, I use a lagged conversion rate. Our average sales cycle is 2 months, or 75% is closed within 2 months. Okay, what's our 2-month close rate? So looking at the whole world from a funnel perspective and a cohort perspective, which is really eye-opening because the majority of marketing folks measure, and I never understood this until very recently. You measure, for the most part, here's how many leads we created in this month and here's how many leads converted in this month. That's our conversion rate. And what I've experienced is, well, if those leads come in on the last day of the month, it's pretty hard to convert them. So just by introducing a 30-day lagged, it took a lot of the noise out of the results. Now, marketing still needs to report how many they produced each month, and that's a very valuable metric. But if you want to tune your funnel, you got to look at it from a cohort perspective and see how long volume, velocity, conversion rate, and value, and see how that varies across your different channels and across the whole bit of the funnel. I mean, I'm kind of a dig it, so that's my view of the world, and a lot of it's on their blog.
Yeah, there's so many changes that we see in at Eventbrite now having a RevOps team. I think between obviously the visibility and the transparency into the numbers that Mike was referring to, one aspect that's really important for us too is we're a global organization. So RevOps has become the place where you get the single source of truth. Before that, we had so many different numbers in the organization. Everybody was pulling their own, let's say, reports or dashboards in Salesforce, and everybody looked at the number differently, came to a meeting, and then we would spend 50 minutes out of an hour arguing why the numbers are different. And so that's gone. If you become that place where when you put systems in place, you have automation in place, everybody starts trusting the numbers. And then the numbers are one number. And so when I go around the globe and I look at our offices around the world, I know that we all look with the same KPIs at the business and that those numbers are correct and everybody can rely on them. That's one of the biggest impacts that I've seen. And maybe just a second one short. This is more on the softer side. You're giving whoever did operations before, whether marketing or sales, you give the people a home. And when I say a home, that means it can be a team they can rely on, or B, it could be their own development. When I came into Eventbrite, I had 25 people who were on the edge of revolting and leaving the company. And that was because nobody was there for them. There wasn't a home for them. They sat in different groups and nobody really understood what they're doing. It's called infrastructure, and that was very demotivating. And when you come into or build a revenue operations, you're showing the team what impact they can have on the top line. And that is really, really important when you want to keep your team. And I think particularly here in Silicon Valley.
I think for us, top of mind for me, especially as we end the year and we're looking at revenue, I think that over the last year, the key highlight for us is seller efficiency. Halfway through the year last year compared to halfway through the year this year, our sales team of sellers and closers, which was half as big as it was the year before, had already exceeded the team from last year. Not just in dollars captured, but a shorter sales cycle, better deal control, closing everything. And so through enablement, through the tools restructured, through changing job descriptions, and another thing that we look at is compensation. So for variable compensation for all of these different teams, a lot of the compensation plans that we had in our legacy model were great, and people were leaving and feeling really good about their paychecks, and the business felt good, but we were basically incentivizing activities and behaviors that weren't really driving revenue. They were driving vanity metrics at the end of the day. And so from repositioning job descriptions and even variable compensation and everything else, now we're driving everything from activities and focus for all of these different groups towards our goals. And so seller efficiency is definitely one. And retention. And so retention isn't just our customer success teams. Retention starts from that first phone call with an SDR, all the way through product marketing and customer marketing and everything that we do elsewhere. So we see an increase in retention at the end of the year for us over last year, and all of it, I think we can kind of point to all the different decisions that we've made through revenue operations.
We are out of time. I want to give a huge round of applause to our awesome panel.